South Korean President Moon Jae-in says the key to the country's success in the fourth industrial revolution will be battery technology. Signing off on new investment plans, he says the industry will soon be bigger than memory chips. South Korea's shipping industry is looking at a return to growth. This year, demand for LNG vessels, in which South Korea leads the world, is expected to surge. And with a speech by President Trump, the U.S. has averted war with Iran for now. South Korea's National Security Council meets again on the issue to discuss risks to Korea in the region. It's 4:00 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for tuning in to Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. South Korea's National Security Council is holding its weekly meeting this afternoon, this time on the situation in the Middle East and how it could affect the Korean people and the Korean economy. That's according to the presidential office. The National Security Council discussed the issue once already on Monday in an emergency meeting. Instead of National Security Chief Chung Eui-yong, who's in Washington for talks with his American and Japanese counterparts, today's session will be chaired by the Presidential Chief of Staff, No Young-min. Also attending are the Deputy Prime Minister and the Trade Minister. After an extreme rise in tensions with Iran in the past week, U.S. President Donald Trump, instead of striking back, says the country will never have a nuclear weapon on his watch, and he'll seek tougher sanctions on the Iranian regime. Our Hong Yu has more.
President Trump is stepping back from an escalating crisis with Iran over his administration's drone killing of top Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. Making his first remarks on Wednesday after the Iranian strikes on Iraqi air bases the night before, Trump indicated there will be no military response, as no Americans were hurt in the Iranian missile attack. Instead, he announced new sanctions on Tehran.
As we continue to evaluate options in response to Iranian aggression, the United States will immediately impose additional punishing economic sanctions on the Iranian regime. These powerful sanctions will remain until Iran changes its behavior.
He said Iran appears to be standing down and called on other nations to recognize that Tehran must end its nuclear ambitions.
Iran must abandon its nuclear ambitions and end its support for terrorism. The time has come for the United Kingdom, Germany, France, Russia, and China to recognize this reality. They must now break away from the remnants of the Iran deal, or JCPOA. And we must all work together toward making a deal with Iran that makes the world a safer and more peaceful place.
President Trump also called on NATO to become much more involved in the Middle East process. Facing re-election in November, President Trump seized the opportunity to stress that he is the president who will stop the U.S. engaging in endless war and vowed that Iran will never be allowed to develop a nuclear weapon on his watch. Hong Yu, Arirang News.
And Iran's supreme leader believes the missile attacks on American troops were, quote, a slap in the face for the U.S., but not enough. Our Kim Hyo-sun takes a closer look at the bases in Iraq where those U.S. troops are stationed.
Iran struck back at the U.S. early Wednesday for killing its most powerful military commander, firing a dozen ballistic missiles at the al-Asad and Erbil bases in Iraq, where American troops are housed. Iran's supreme leader said in a speech following the attacks that the Americans have received a slap in the face. The al-Asad base, one of the bases hit by the attack, was where President Trump made a surprise visit in December 2018. It was Trump's first visit to a conflict zone and came nearly 2 years into his presidency.
We came to al-Asad to share our eternal gratitude for everything you do to keep America safe, strong, and free.
U.S. Vice President Mike Pence has also visited al-Asad, which houses about 1,500 U.S. and coalition forces. In November last year, Pence also paid an unannounced visit to the air base near Erbil in northern Iraq, which was also targeted by Iran. As of late 2019, about 6,000 American troops are deployed in Iraq, a fraction of the 150,000 military personnel who served during Operation Iraqi Freedom, which lasted from 2003 to 2011. as Delta Force commandos stationed at the Erbil base led the operation which killed the leader of the Islamic State terror group in October last year. The base is considered crucial in America's fight against ISIS. South Korea's Zaitun Division was also dispatched to Erbil base from 2004 to 2008 for peacebuilding and reconstruction missions. Kim Hyun-san, Arirang News.
And satellite pictures have been released showing the damage caused by the Iranian missile strike on al-Asad airbase. Taken by the private Earth imaging company Planet Labs, they show damage to 5 facilities on the base. Among those were aircraft hangars turned to black rubble. Some of the images show missiles also landed on the base's runway. Iraq says the base was hit by 17 missiles. U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper says they fell on facilities and parking lots and damaged a helicopter. And Wednesday night, 2 rockets landed near the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad's Green Zone. According to the Iraqi military, they were Katyusha rockets, and they caused no casualties. It's not yet known who is responsible. Rocket attacks on the Green Zone, which contains government buildings and foreign missions, are not uncommon. But this one comes just a day after Iran's missile attack. Last year saw the weakest growth in the global economy since the financial crisis a decade ago. This year, according to the World Bank, the global economy will likely see a modest rebound, but it's still fragile and vulnerable to uncertainties. Kim Hae-sung reports.
The World Bank forecasts global economic growth to hit 2.5% this year and 2.6% in 2021. That's slightly higher than the 2.4% growth recorded in 2019. But the projection for 2020 is 0.2 percentage points lower than the World Bank's previous forecast made last June, as the pace of recovery in trade and investment remains weak. The World Bank says advanced economies are likely to record an average of 1.4% growth in 2020, down 0.1 percentage points from its previous forecast, reflecting a weakness in manufacturing. It expects the U.S. growth rate to fall from 2.3% in 2019 to 1.8% in 2020, citing increased trade costs from higher tariffs and uncertainty over its economic relations with other countries that will weigh on investment and business confidence. The World Bank projects emerging markets and developing economies to see 4.1% growth. That's down 0.5 percentage points from its June forecast, but up from the 3.5% tallied last year, thanks to stronger growth from large emerging economies like India and Brazil. The Asia-Pacific region, where South Korea is located, is forecast to ease to 5.7%, mainly on China's slowing growth, which is expected to slip below 6% growth this year for the first time since 1990. The World Bank cautioned that a number of risks could upend this forecast, including the possibility of renewed trade hostilities between Washington and Beijing, an escalation of geopolitical tensions, or a series of extreme weather events. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
President Moon Jae-in, in a speech today, said that the city of Pohang will contribute greatly to South Korea's growth in the Fourth Industrial Revolution through the secondary battery industry. Red tape is being cut for industries in Pohang and elsewhere, and those measures, President Moon said, will be sped up this year. Our Park Hee-jun has more.
President Moon Jae-in expressed confidence that the city of Pohang, Gyeongsangbuk-do province will succeed in nurturing the rechargeable battery industry, ultimately contributing to South Korea's success in the Fourth Industrial Revolution. He was attending a signing ceremony in Pohang on Thursday for GS Engineering and Construction's 3-year plan to invest $86 million in facilities for collecting and recycling batteries.
철강이 산업의 살이었다면 배터리는 미래 산업의 살입니다. 핸드폰, 전기차, 에너지 저장장치 등으로 배터리 수요가 빠르게 증가하여 2025년이면 메모리 반도체보다 큰 시장으로 성장할 전망입니다.
Pohang is among the 14 districts that have been freed from regulations last year. A traditional powerhouse for steel and shipbuilding, the city is eyeing a rebound as a leader in batteries, an essential pillar of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. This being his first visit to a regulation-free zone, President Moon looks to show his determination to foster new growth engines and promote regional economic development through regulatory innovation. He even highlighted in his New Year's address earlier in the week that his administration will push for such measures to revitalize the economy. The investment by GS Engineering and Construction is the biggest so far in a regulation-free zone and a first by a major South Korean company. With that, the completed plant is expected to process batteries for up to 1,000 electric cars each year. The region is also anticipated to create 300 jobs and see annual sales of around $69 million in the rechargeable battery sector from 2022. Later in the day, the president also visited the country's leading steelmaker POSCO's smart factory that uses artificial intelligence. There, he called for continued cooperation between large and small companies, but he also stressed the need to address concerns that smart factories could lead to job losses and highlighted the need to add jobs instead. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
After years in the doldrums, things are looking better for South Korea's shipbuilding industry in the new year, thanks to high demand for LNG vessels and Korea's leadership in eco-friendly shipping. Our Kim Da-mi went to one of South Korea's leading shipbuilders to find out more.
After years of struggling to stay afloat, the country's shipbuilding industry is ready for a return to growth. The rosy outlook for the new year is rooted in the new environmentally friendly trend in the industry, as the demand for vessels powered by liquefied natural gas or LNG is expected to surge. Starting in 2020, the International Maritime Organization is implementing a new regulation to reduce maritime sulfur emissions from 3.5% to just 0.5%. U.S. shale oil production will also help Korean shipbuilding companies find a more favorable spot in the market. Most importantly, however, Korean LNG shipbuilding technology is unbeatable.
South Korea's LNG technology is the best of the best in the entire world. The country's productivity, which is the most crucial part of shipbuilding, is head and shoulders above other countries in terms of work capacity, design, and supervision in the shipbuilding process.
Our company, Daewoo Shipbuilding, was the first to export LNG vessels to the whole world. Along with our very own technical skills, we have achieved our own patents for LNG shipbuilding, which satisfies the needs of our global customers.
After hitting bottom rock 4 years ago, the country's shipbuilding industry is now once again picking up. In fact, South Korea retained its top spot in shipbuilding for a second year in 2019, securing 37% of worldwide orders. The recovery in this bread and butter industry also means job training, with more than 11,000 people brought on board last November. Global uncertainties, including U.S.-China trade war, linger into the new year, but there is still enough upside for a new boom in the industry. Changing shipbuilding market dynamics, especially the introduction of future-oriented shipbuilding ideas and technologies, could be one approach. To deal with a paradigm shift in the industry, South Korea's Trade Ministry has pledged to expand support for the development of smart shipyards and eco-friendly and self-driving vessels. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News, Koje.
Oil prices have fallen sharply after President Trump's speech downplaying Iran's attack on U.S. troops in Iraq. Brent crude in London had briefly hit a 3-month high of almost $72 a barrel immediately after Tuesday's attack, but by the end of trading on Wednesday, it was down 4.1% to settle at $65.44. West Texas Intermediate also dropped 4.9% to $59.61 a barrel. For now, oil from the Middle East continues to flow unimpeded, but analysts say there are still fears about those shipments, which account for almost a third of global supplies. Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Dr. Kim Se-won, Professor of Economics at Ewha Women's University. Professor Kim, thank you as always for coming on.
Good afternoon, Devin.
So addressing the American people last night, our time, President Trump said that instead of striking back at Iran for its missile attack, he'll impose extremely tough sanctions. This would seem to alleviate some concerns, but Iran is already under all kinds of sanctions. What options does President Trump have?
So U.S. and Iran decided to back away from further military conflicts. I think it is really good news to global economy because the crude oil is the single most important natural resource. As you pointed out, Evan, Iran is already under very tough economic sanctions from U.S. So additional options of Mr. Trump would be imposing sanctions on Iraq, which is the neighbor of Iran. And also, Mr. Trump can demand more restricted trade between European countries and Iran.
Yes, indeed. Well, as we just heard, with war averted for now, oil prices are coming back down, uncertainty relieved in the financial markets. What's the story today in terms of the markets and oil prices especially?
Well, after all, this episode reminds us again the importance of crude oil in modern economy. And thanks to Mr. Trump's pulls back from war with Iran today, global oil price, like Western Texas Index, surged over 5% in a single day. But yesterday, global oil price used to drop down to 5% for the increased tension between United States and Iran. So, broadly speaking, global oil market has been pretty much stabilized.
Yeah, and this sort of mood, if you could talk a little bit more on these issues, this mood will have a positive impact on the financial markets. Tell us about that.
Yes, yesterday Kospi of Korea dropped over 1% in a single day due to Iran's missile attack on U.S. military base in Iraq. Korean stocks are particularly sensitive to oil price because Korea is importing 100% of crude oil, and 70% of it is from Middle East countries. But today, Kospi recovered the previous loss of yesterday with over 1.6% increase. So this kind of recovery situation well spread out all major stock markets.
Yes, indeed. Across the board, pretty much back up from that dip we saw earlier in the week. But now, in other news, the World Bank is estimating economic growth this year globally to be the weakest since 2009 in the financial crisis. But it's forecasting a pickup in 2021 and 2022. Why would growth be so weak this year?
Actually, 6 months ago, World Bank released global economic forecast was 2.7%. But World Bank this time updated it with 0.2% decreased global economic growth of 2.5%. I believe that they see more negative factors on international trade, particularly from U.S.-China trade conflicts and slowing economies into power economies, particularly in Asia and Europe, like China and Germany, respectively.
Yeah, China clearly a factor there, poised to go down below 6% growth next year, which would have huge impact. But now here in Korea, the government for this year has a so-called super budget aimed at stimulating the economy. More than 71% of the budget will be spent in the first half of the year. But it's running on the country's biggest ever deficit, so there are concerns about that. Is that something to worry about?
I believe expansionary fiscal policy is necessary, something under recessionary phase of Korean economy. And it is also understandable that government stimulates economy by spending over 70% of its budget in the first half of this year. But government spending is mostly focused on one-shot, temporary job creation for a young and old generation without promoting the private firms and workers' productivity. But we know that government can spend money like this forever. So there should be something promoting private sectors, decent job creation by improving more business-friendly environment and production of the workers.
That sounds like what many are saying, which is that it's about how the money is spent, not just simply spending a bunch of money.
That's correct.
All right, Dr. Kim, we'll have to leave it there for today. Thanks so much for sharing your insights.
Thank you very much.
At this year's Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, the latest developments in 5G technology are being presented by companies in a wide range of industries. 5G's moved beyond telecommunications and is penetrating industries like media and mobility. Samsung and Chinese firms Lenovo and TCL are presenting their newest tablet PCs, laptops, and smartphones that support 5G. Samsung is also showing off the world's first 5G 8K television, which can wirelessly receive UHD video. Self-driving cars at the show also hint at 5G's limitless scalability. Sony presented its electric car, Vision S, and Samsung and SK Telecom jointly presented an in-vehicle multi-display function that uses 5G to provide a seamless connection between software, AI, and the smart vehicle. Believe it or not, companies at CES are even bringing out flying cars. South Korean companies this year demonstrating technologies of the future with plans to commercialize them in the next few years. Those also include completely driverless cars. Our Oh Soo-young is there.
The next decade of mobility has taken off at the Consumer Electronics Show, first in form of a flying car. Hyundai Motor's 5-person air vehicle has taken the show by storm, with a prototype on show at the exhibition. It's said to have a cruising speed of 290 kilometers an hour and flies at an altitude of up to 600 meters above the ground. As futuristic as that might sound, the cars are less than 3 years away from launching with Uber's air taxi service in 2023.
Hyundai is Uber Elevate's first vehicle partner with capabilities to manufacture at automotive scale. And we believe Hyundai has the potential to build Uber air taxis at rates not possible in the current aerospace industry.
But automobiles on the ground certainly aren't falling behind. Samsung's 5G driving solution will power BMW's first ever connected car that runs on the mobile network as early as 2021. Samsung's 5G V2X or vehicle-to-everything system allows the car to communicate with traffic lights, other vehicles and smart devices, allowing it to detect and anticipate any hindrances to its journey. Artificial intelligence features like facial detection alert the driver when they seem tired or distracted. Meanwhile, SK Telecom is showcasing a HD mapping system, which uses a crowdsourcing concept to gather and update data in real time about road signs and conditions.
The information is gathered by vehicles and requires great accuracy and detail. The usual navigation systems can be off by 1 to 2 meters, but this system narrows that down to 30 to 40 centimeters. Fast updates can also prevent accidents.
But what about in-car entertainment?
It's not just about driving smoothly, it's about having a seamless experience. SK's Connected Car solution allows you to stream your favorite songs, book restaurants, and even parking spots on the way, just by using your voice.
SK's mobile edge computing technology is enabling all these 5G vehicle functions, as well as high-quality video and media content. Even those in the rear seats can enjoy individual media streaming.
Right now, if your device has limited capability for AI processing and rich media processing, all those heavy compute processes can be offloaded to MEC.
With the proliferation of the 5G network, it's clear that the pleasure of driving is taking on a whole new meaning, whether you're behind the wheel or in the back seat. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News, Las Vegas.
Apple reportedly earned up to $50 billion last year through its App Store, though growth is slowing. The tech giant said Wednesday that since 2008, it's paid developers on the platform $155 billion, an increase from a year ago of $35 billion. According to CNBC, which conducted its own analysis, that means total sales of the App Store were as much as $50 billion, assuming Apple passes on 70% of it to developers. And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.